everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Apex. It feels really nice to say that.
It does. Starting off second season.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. Yeah. We were really consistent last year with the Formula One season, doing like a podcast for every race, right? So this season we're putting a bit more pressure on ourselves, and we're doing obviously a lot more. So there will probably be a lot more changes, but we're just kind of going with the flow at the moment. Obviously the biggest change behind us right now is the setup, but it looks quite cool rather than just a white background. But let's get into it. Formula E, season 10. Right? 10 years of electric racing. I will just point out, I will probably talk over Sam for most of it, because...
and then I'll do the same.
You do the same Formula 1. You kind of just lead the Formula 1 and I will probably lead the Formula E. That's probably how it's going to go. But we're talking about season 10. We're at 10 years of electric racing, which is incredible in terms of development of the cars. This is obviously the second year of the Gen 3 car, so the teams have got a little bit more of an understanding of kind of what's going on. Still not a lot, but they've done Valencia twice now, pre-season testing, so they're going into the season with a little bit more of their head in the right space. So, I mean, actually, we haven't said much about Valencia, have we?
No, and there was a lot that happened in Valencia in terms of, firstly, we've got the introduction of the fast charging, which they tried to test.
Boost charging,
obviously, you can tell your side of the story.
So obviously I was there, but obviously that doesn't. Everyone knows it's pretty much the same as what I know. But so we only got a few test sessions in terms of the whole week. It was really disrupted with the fire that happened. But we tested the boost charging. We've got a lot out of the week actually. I think Jaguar were 1-2 across the whole week. So that was an interesting start to the season. But I think Mexico really did kind of prove the start of the season.
100%.
As it always does with testing and then an actual race. So we're in Mexico, race 1. Let's talk about it. Obviously. I mean, 3 teams with the same lineup. So there was a lot of changes up and down the grid, obviously with some big drivers moving as well. Obviously Cassidy going to Jaguar, being the kind of prevalent one, I think. Absolutely.
But it obviously showed that he made a good move.
Absolutely, and I mean, envision being a customer team for Jaguar, so they have the same powertrain. It seemed the most sensible kind of move for him. In terms of Cassidy's career, he wants to progress and become a world champion, and he's probably got more of a chance doing that with Jaguar.
100%.
And obviously they want the fastest driver. They lost Sam Bird, who in his place, who's now gone to McLaren. But an interesting switch up of drivers, to be honest. And I mean, you wanted to talk a bit about Jehan Darugla.
Yes, 100%. So obviously with the kind of the busyness of the grid in Formula 1, you have such good talent in Formula 2 and Indycar and stuff like that who aren't able to get to that point. And I think Jehan Darugla is a great example of this. He did very, very well in F2, obviously never got to win it, but he was very, very consistently good. And he's made the move now to Maserati in Formula E. And unfortunately, he's still kind of getting his legs, I think. But in our next podcast, in Diriyah, you'll see that that natural skill is coming through, and he's a very exciting talent. I've followed him quite closely, and look, I'm excited to see where he's going to end up.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you're right in saying it is a struggle coming in as the only rookie in the season. Especially with Diriyah. We'll talk about Diriyah next week, but he went into Diriyah. Every other driver there has driven there before. He hasn't. So obviously he has a huge disadvantage. However, he spent so much time on the sim and all stuff like that.
He's been spending a lot of time on the simulator apparently.
And like you said, you can just see his talent.
100%. There is the raw talent there that you're able to see in Formula E because they're basically all the same, and you get to see that kind of raw talent come out, which we saw in the qualifying.
Definitely.
But we'll talk about that next podcast.
So we'll go on to qualifying first. Obviously, the format of Formula E is a bit different to Formula 1 if you know.
Way more exciting.
Way more exciting. So obviously qualifying is really quite difficult. What they do is very difficult. So they have the group sessions, and then they have the duels, and then the semi-final, the finals,
and then the final.
And I don't know off the top of my head, but that's how it works. So we had Pascal Wehrlein pole position. Not surprising, I don't know.
I don't think so. I wasn't surprised. I think, especially from last season, he came off such a good start last season. Everyone kind of picked him to be the 2023 world champion. obviously the latter half of the season really let him down. So I think he really came into this season with some aggression, trying to get a good result off the bat, and he clearly did.
Absolutely.
But obviously, I think it's fair to say that I am a Pascal fan for the championship this year, and you are a Jaguar fan for the championship, whether it's Mitch or Cassidy. Yeah, look, he had a great qualifying, and yeah.
Which is just interesting to see what happens, because obviously he had a great few races in like Diriyah. He won the double in Diriyah last year, and then like through the season he lost it a little bit, and obviously then Jake went on to be world champion. So it will be interesting to see, but he had a really dominant role in the race as well.
God,
I mean, we'll talk about the race in a minute. But yeah, incredible. A little bit more on qualifying. Obviously, we had Buemi and him in the final.
Yes, yeah, I think it was,
and obviously Verline took pole. But we'll talk about Dennis for a second here.
Yes, that was a big shock in qualifying.
World champion. He was incredibly dominant last season in terms of like. Oh, not in the middle of the season. If you're watching Formula E Unplugged, no. But you know, it's I mean, what did he? Was he? I don't know what.
I think he qualified in the middle of his group. I think so.
Well, he went out in the group stages, which is not what you want as a championship team, right?
I think he qualified about I think it was about P13, because then he made up 4 spaces. No, P14. It must have been P14, because then he made up 4 spaces and got to P10 at the first lap. So yeah, it was not good from him.
It was definitely not something Andretti wanted to see for that.
Oh no! And obviously with a weaker second driver of NATO, you want Jake to be getting those results, and I think that's why Jaguar have the edge, especially in qualifying, because they've got 2 very raw, quick drivers.
That's exactly what I'm saying. You know, Envision had the edge last season solely because of Cassidy and Buemi. Obviously, they're both really strong drivers. But now they've brought in Franz, who's also a strong driver, but I wouldn't argue the same level as them. And then obviously in Jaguar, you've got Mitch and Cassidy, and I think you are right. They are top level.
Oh, absolutely.
Top
they are the top 5 drivers.
Absolutely. So. Is it, you know, fingers crossed. But they were both knocked out in the semi-final, so I can't really say much about it. So let's talk about the race now. Obviously, it was only a single race. So Formula E have double headers sometimes, so they have races on like Saturday and Sunday, which is what we're going to see Berlin.
Yes.
And then obviously when we went to Monaco last year, it was a one race kind of thing. So this is just one race in Mexico. So it seems like a lot when you think about it, just to take all the stuff there from one race. But you know, what can you do? So we had a few like incidences, and Da Costa, De Grassi, and Sati Camera all were out for several reasons, going into walls, backs of people. You know what. But I think a big thing to talk about is Franz.
Yes, I do.
His accident. I don't know if you remember.
I remember it slightly, but yeah, it was. I think he lost the brakes. Did he?
So he went into like the section after like the stadium section. I'll just say it purely for everyone else's benefit, because you don't remember, but I've got a vivid memory of it. So he comes out of that and he had no brakes. So obviously carried too much speed into the corner and then went into the wall. It was not a nice impact to crash. I'm not going to lie, head-on impact. So obviously he was parked across the track with like that, with barely a car's width on the other side to get past. Whereas in F1, would you reckon we'd get a red flag for that?
No, I think it would definitely be a safety car.
Safety car.
But I think the way that they did it in here, because obviously in F1 it's completely different. You don't have that kind of race director comms to drivers. And there's so many levels of communication it has to go through to get to the driver. Whereas in Formula E, it's so direct, it's so much more effective, and I think it needs to be implemented in some way.
I think so. I think this what we've witnessed in Mexico really says it all. I mean, as a person that works in race control, I can actually absolutely vouch for this. You know, Scott being able to talk to the drivers, like obviously being able to tell them, by the way, there is a car on the left-hand side of the circuit there. Make sure you stick to the right, going through it at like a minimum speed. Right. It's safe. Less disruption of the race. Right. So they don't have to add as many laps at the end.
I think there's only 2 added laps at the end.
Yeah, something like that. It was not much at all. So I really vouch for that. I mean, I think I'm going to talk about it every single podcast I do, but I literally love the fact that he has so much communication with all the drivers. It doesn't have to go through the teams. It's just instant, and I think it just works so much better.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. It's just, I think it's that time as well. It's the time that it takes to get information to the drivers, and when it has to go through so many people, it's so delayed. Whereas this is so direct, and it just works.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's just really good. But we'll talk quickly. Well, not quickly, but we'll go on to the final standings. Obviously, we have Pascal, Buemi, Cassidy.
Yeah, absolutely dominant from Verline, I have to say.
Dominant from Verline.
He when he was coming back in towards the end of the race, but throughout the majority of the race, it was a 2-3 second gap, which is very, very good in Formula E.
Absolutely.
And it just was pole to win.
Yeah, absolutely dominant. And I think as well, it's quite important to think that's a very dominant from him as a driver, like in the Drivers' Championship, and then obviously in the Constructors' Championship, it was such a dominant weekend for Jaguar.
Oh, unbelievable.
Right, the Jaguar powertrain, obviously, because Envision and Jaguar both had the same powertrain.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredibly dominant.
And I think that's what we're going to see throughout this year, because it's like with Nick and Evans, they're constantly going to be getting points.
Yeah.
Dennis is going to be getting wins. I don't think anyone's disputing that.
Absolutely.
Norman Nato isn't going to be up there. Buemi is going to be up there.
Yeah.
Fries, we did see in Derriere that he had a strong race, but it is going to be Buemi kind of carrying that team.
Absolutely.
And it's the same with Antonio Felix, Da Costa and Verline. Verline is going to be carrying that team. It's just not Pascal. Jaguar just have that kind of that link up, and it just works.
Yeah.
And it's going to be just raking the points every single race, I think.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And I think something that backs that up is the fact that Nick Cassidy got fastest lap.
Yeah.
I was just looking on there then, I was like, oh, fastest lap.
Yeah, just getting in the more points. Like,
says it all, doesn't it? I
yeah.
mean, it's brilliant for us for the championship. So, but yeah, obviously we talked about Jake Dennis, P9 in the race.
Yeah, it wasn't strong. It wasn't a strong start to his championship.
No, it wasn't. Still points, but not where he'd want to be.
No,
at this start.
but I do think a standout drive for me was his qualifying definitely helped, but Matt's Gunther.
Yeah.
What a drive from him. Everyone expected him to simply just drop out the points slowly but surely. Obviously, we didn't have as many overtakes as we'd expected in Mexico.
Yes.
But he kept his ground. P4, brilliant result for Maserati to start the season.
Yeah, I mean, to see them up there is just really quite nice. I mean, talk a little bit about McLaren quickly, because obviously you are a McLaren fan.
Yeah. I think we had a good race. Bear in mind the season that we had last year, obviously we did tail off massively towards the end of the year. But Jake, 7th in the points, very, very strong. Obviously, Bird didn't have the best race at all. I think he just got bogged down with a lot of traffic. Yeah. But it was a great race from Jake.
Yeah, definitely. And I think in a little bit of a better position than maybe last year.
Yeah, I think it's definitely more solid. I think we're going to be more consistent, whether it's 1 or 2 drives in the points. I think we're going to be more consistent there.
Definitely. I agree. Yeah, so there's not really much else to say there, to be completely honest, because Diriyah is where it all kind of goes a bit mad.
Yeah.
So next podcast we're going to be talking about Diriyah, which is a double header, round 2 and 3. So I hope you enjoyed this kind of section of the podcast. But yeah, we'll see you next week.
See ya.